efficient way to get rid of all the bugs was to get rid of all the software, which is technically and statistically correct. But artificial neural nets are sort of a black box, so we'll never know for sure. Hey Richard, did you order meat?
Yeah, that's Silicon Valley. It's one of my favorite shows actually. You people should watch it. Um,
The reality of being able to wake up.
so, uh, so why am I asking you to watch Silicon Valley? It's because when you're learning tech, okay, um, when you're learning tech, there are several things. Let's say this is the entire knowledge that you can learn. Anything in tech, okay? Um, everything in tech falls under this one graph right here, okay? Um, it's also important to note that nobody can even get to 80, okay? Let's say this is 80%. There is not a single person on this planet can get to 80, okay? And those who have gotten to, let's say, 60%, they are like, how can we call it, like the demigods of tech, like they are at 60%. This is all they know. Now the interesting bit is, whatever it is your teacher gives you, whatever it is I'm going to give you, is roughly at 20%, okay? Despite how knowledgeable I might seem, despite how much we learn in this class, just know the most I can give you is 20%. You can add an extra, let's say 30%, okay, so that you get to, I think, around 50%. So this is 50%. So this is what you add yourself, okay? This I cannot give you. It's not that maybe I don't want to, but it's because tech is just extremely too wide to give you even 50%. So whatever I'm going to give you is 20%. You add your 30%, you get to 50%. Now there is an extra 10 here that will get you to a tech demigod that, it's kind of hard to get that 10. But that is just the analogy. So just know, now here, this 30% that is the 30% that you learn yourself, this is where you get your aha moments. And this is now where tech becomes fun, because you get this from articles, reading articles, watching tutorials on YouTube, and more importantly, watching tech related content. So for example, if I just go to my Instagram right now and I try to look for a random video, let me just do that. So so you see, like this video right here, it's about startups, okay? So of course, if you're just getting started in tech, you don't of course know what a startup is. Let's try to look for another video. Something like that. It's just a fun way to roast people who use Windows. Not you guys. um I think yesterday I must be watching non-tech related. Oh yeah, something like this. See, to a total beginner, you don't understand what that means. Okay, so it looks like it's a car that is about to hit something, but it's not hitting it. It's just like stuck in a loop. And then as you can see there's a bunch of code. Temp 0, while temp is lower than 100, temp plus 1, blah, blah. It doesn't make sense. But as you continue learning, practicing, and whatnot, you might come across this meme or this video, and then you get the, that's what you call the aha moment. Yeah, this light is super hot, so I'm getting a little bit sweaty. Let me just get this off. Let me see if I'm on live. Yeah. All right. So, let's begin our class today. So, let's first begin by learning how to post in the help channel, because I've realized some people are having challenges posting in the help channel. So let's see how to do that. So if you're on Discord, for example, you are in the main server, in the main channel, which is the 8 hours challenge, and you have an issue you want to post in the help channel. So what you should do is you can click on this icon right here, and this icon will open this screen. Okay, now inside this screen you will click on help channel. Where is it? This one right here. Okay, so this it might not look the same on your end because I'm in different other servers as shown here. So you might not have this on your end, you might only have this, which is the 8 hours Discord server. So you're going to click on this help here, and then once you click on it, it opens the help channel, which looks like so. So to post a problem here, you can click on this plus icon, and this plus icon will open this screen. Okay, so here you can type the title of your problem like so. So try to make the title as descriptive as possible. So like here I am saying I am unable to install Python. It looks like a blanket statement, but you know, it's not badly off. Compare this to if somebody just typed, yeah, compare this to if somebody just typed, I'm having problems with Python. You know, you might fail to understand, okay, what problems? Is it installing Python? Is it running Python code? So try to make your title very descriptive, and also try to make your text very descriptive, the exact issue you're facing. So like here I've said, as per class 0, I have downloaded the installer, but when I click it, I see the error below. So don't be you know, like, try to be very specific with your error, so that at least whoever is trying to help you can understand your issue very well. So after you're done with your description, your title, and then you've attached an image, you can just click on this icon right here to attach an image, and then you click post, and then once you do that, it will direct you to this screen, which now shows the help items inside here. So you might want to create one post per problem, and if you need to edit, you can just click on it and click edit, so that you can add more information that you might have forgotten. So that is just about the help channel. So we try to make the main channel you know, as minimal as possible, so that we only share important information on this channel. There are other channels you can post in, like for example, we have the off topic. The off topic is for posting things that are not related to the course, you know, share a joke, share, you know, life experience and whatnot, ask questions. We also have the achievements. This is where we share our assignments and anything else that you might have done, you know, as a way to practice your skills. So it's important because somebody can see that you did something, they might try to do the same thing and learn from what you learned. We have the general, but this is just for welcoming new users, and then we have the voice channel and the office hours down here. These are the voice channel. So if you click here and you join, you can like have a call with whoever is there. So it's also a nice way of, you know, having conversations in the server. So that's it on Discord, how to create a help issue. So let me just move this out of the way. So far we've looked at variables, and this is how you create a variable and assign it a value. This is how you create a variable and assign it a value as well. But this is an integer. This is I thought I changed this. This is supposed to have quotation marks because it's a string. Then we have Boolean data types. We have list like so. Then we have conditions. If this is true, then execute this. We've looked at all that. In the last session, we looked at functions, how to write functions, and we looked at why it's important to write functions. Okay. So we said, for example, if you have to welcome new users to the server, you will probably do something like this. Okay. Let me just give the notation too. You probably do something like this. So you would imagine if your server has 1,000 people, you have to print this 1,000 times. Okay. And developers, we are lazy. We like to simplify things, do things the easier way. So we introduced the concept of functions, and we said a function is just a grouping of similar instructions. So you create a function, you define it here. We call that a function definition. Now I need to use another notation too. So you define a function, you give it a name, and then you explain what exactly you want the function to do, and then you call the function. Okay. So a function involves 3 steps: defining the function, specifying the instructions you want the function to run, and then calling that function. And as you can notice here, we have indented this entire block. It's because this function will only execute instructions that are indented under it. Okay. So if you pick these as the entire function, we have this group of instructions here. So this will be executed as one or a single unit. We also looked at how to pass arguments and parameters, and we said if you define a function like so, the instructions inside here will be performed to whatever you pass here, okay, to this name here. And when you're passing it here, you don't pass it as the exact name, you pass it as a variable or as a pointer. You can think of it as a pointer to whatever value you'll pass in later. So here we are passing John, Mary, and David. We also said this is what we call positional positional argument, because Python will interpret it as per the position it occupies. Okay. We also had a look at reserved keywords or reserved names in Python, and these are things that you type that Python understands without referring to them somewhere else in your code. And we also looked at user defined names, okay, like variable names, function names, and so on and so forth. So we also looked at what else am I forgetting here? We also looked at how to structure our code if we have data and actions all at the same time. So we looked at the example of a student, and we said what are the properties of a student. A student will have a name, they'll have age, they'll have the course they are taking, and they will have the student ID. What actions can a student perform? A student can study, a student can submit an assignment, a student can attend a class. So these are actions, these are data. So if you remember from our previous classes, from our very first classes, we said the whole business of software engineering is storing data, manipulating data, presenting data to the user. And that is why you see data here is important, and the actions to be performed on the data is also important. Now, how can we represent the student and actions enough as a function? So we came here, we said first we start by storing the student name, we store the student age, we store the course they are taking, and then we explain the actions. Now the actions are represented as functions. Okay. So the actions are represented as functions. So this is a function, this is a function. Okay. And this looks pretty okay because you have the data here, and then you have the actions, and then now you execute the actual thing. So study, submit assignment, and and then now we have data and functions, but they are separate. Problems appear when we have many students. So here, for example, you're only working with one student. Assuming you have a separate student, you'll have to separate this into multiple variables, multiple functions. Okay, so that is where we introduce the concept of an object, and we said instead of looking at the specific students and the specific whatever, we can just group them as an object. Okay, just think of an object. Okay, umejua kupanda hapo. You can just think of an object as a way to group actions and data as in one unit. And you said when you say group, all we are talking about is the indentation. Okay, like right here you see this line. Okay, let me change my annotation tool. You see this line right here. Okay, define, they are all indented inside the class definition. Okay, as you can see here. So when we talk about grouping, this is essentially what we are talking about, is indenting the same having the same indentation. And then we said here we are defining the data that the object will have, and then here we are defining the actions that the object will have. Now this thing here can be very confusing. Okay, as a matter of fact, when I was trying to learn this entire thing, I wrote a sticky note. As you can see, I have quite a lot of sticky notes on my wall. I don't know if you guys can see. I have quite a lot of sticky notes, and when I was trying to learn this thing, I wrote a sticky note and I put it on my monitor, so that every time I'm using my computer, I'll go and read and try to cram. Okay, so it's define dash init and then self and then name, which is very wrong. Don't do that. Okay, in the age of AI, we don't do that. Just have a holistic understanding that a class will contain data, and it will contain the actions to be performed on the the data that you defined. And then once we're done, we do what we create an instance of a class. So as you can see here, we are saying student 1 is student, which is right here. Now this student refers to this student we defined up here, refers to this. Okay, so that means this object that we are creating here will have the data, and then it will also inherit the actions that it can perform. This is what we are going to learn today. So I know you're already confused. You don't know what I'm talking about. So don't worry about that. This is now what you're going to learn today. Now let's look at an example. If you remember very well, I told you guys, if you want to learn programming faster, don't think about the actual code that you're writing. Think about the problem that you're solving. Okay, think about the problem, then blend it with the fundamental knowledge that you are trying to learn. Okay, so this looks very confusing, but first let's take a step back. Okay, let's look at this website called Soma Stories. Okay, and if you've signed up for Soma Stories, if you have an account with Soma Stories, you'll realize that on Thursdays, okay, guys, people people like sex stuff, so don't blame me. This is not my content. So so if you've signed up for the platform, you would realize that on Thursdays, I think it's Thursdays, you get emails in your email, okay, which you call digest. Okay, so every Thursday we pick some random stories, let's say 3 stories, and then we send it to your email for you to read. So that is what we call digest. Now from the surface it looks very simple. Just pick stories here. For example, you can pick the first 3 here and send it to your inbox. If it's podcast, you can just come pick 3 podcasts and send it to your email. It looks very simple, but let's approach the problem as a software engineer. So by the way, if you're trying to learn how to code and you don't have a computer, there's another way you can practice. For example, you're watching this video on in a matatu on your way back home, and you want to try and type the functions and the variables. Of course, you can't install Python on your on your phone, so you can do this. You can go to this website called SoloLearn, and then you click the very first link here. And then here you're going to look for code compilers. This right here, click on it, and then you can click on Python. So there are quite a few, but you will just want Python, and then it will open this. Okay, now here you can just practice your coding. If you want to write a function, for example, or a print statement, you can just say print. Let me just zoom in. You can just say print hello mass. Okay, so once you've typed your instructions, you can hit run down here, and it will run your code. So assuming you want to do other things like add two numbers, so you can say number 1 is 23, number 2 is 34, for example. So you want to print number 1 plus number 2. So we can run our code here. And as you can see, it's working. So this is just a nice way to practice if you don't have a computer at that particular time. Like I've already told you guys, software engineering requires a great deal of practice. Practice. Of course, we don't write all this now, we let AI write, but we also need to understand what AI is writing. Okay, so like I said in my previous class, we call that AI assisted development. So young man, so now we've looked at how to send digest stories. Okay, we pick stories from the system and then send to the user's email. How does this look like under the hood? Okay, prank compilation. You love the stories. Okay, I see you. So how does this look like to an engineer? You are an engineer and you've been told we have this system, it has stories, we want to send stories to users. So let's say we have user 1. Okay, let me just draw an avatar. Okay, so we have a user here. We have no, let's not do that. I don't have. Okay, let me just add here something. User. All right, now we have something to work with. So we have user. Okay, and we also have stories. So let's say story 1, or let me just pick an actual story name so that you guys can find it relatable. So we'll go pick a story title. So we'll go to stories. Oh, by the way, I've decided to create a book, for those people trying to catch up and for those who want to have a systematic way of following through. So if you go to the book section, you can see I've started here, but I haven't added the first chapter yet. I will add that chapter later, but it just has the synopsis. So this will be like a written version of this entire course. So you can go to Soma Stories, sign up, download the app, and then follow this author called Moses Mbadi so that you get notified. There's a bug. I don't know where that bug came from, but you said you're picking story title. So let me try and pick a better title. These people love porn. So I'll come here, I'll say we have this story, we have that story, and we have that story. So we just put it here. Okay, so we have these 3 stories we want to send via email, as a digest. Okay, so digests are sent every Thursday. Okay, they are sent every Thursday. So there are things we need to do. Number 1, we need to make sure that readers read stories, okay? So that if we send a story and the user hasn't read it, we can try and send it again. Maybe we make the assumption the user has not read that story. So for us to pick these stories, we don't pick them manually as we've done here, because imagine you have 1,000 stories. You cannot pick the stories manually. Imagine you have 1,000 stories, 3,000 users. You cannot pick the stories manually. You first have to do a couple of things. So let's say actions. So we have actions to perform. Okay. So the first action is we get recommendation. recommendations, okay? Because if I have registered for the platform and I've said I'm only interested in tech related stories, don't give me 18 plus stories, don't give me stories about marriage, don't give me stories about religion. I only want tech related stories. So for this particular user, we want to get whatever stories have been recommended for them, okay? Not any, for example, if you go to the app right now, if you've registered, I can just go to the recommendation screen. So the For You section, which is the recommendation screen, as you can see, you can compare that to whatever you're seeing on your end. There is a very high chance it can be slightly different, okay? Guys, I don't go to strip clubs. I don't know why this story is here, so please. So we have to get the recommended story for that user. What else can we use? What else can we do? Let me just see the functions I copied here. All right, so the other thing we need to do is we need to get I've already forgotten what I was looking for. My goodness. We need to also check the stories that have already been sent, okay? Check sent stories. Or we can also check read stories by that reader, okay? So what else can we do? We can also try and get digest enabled users, okay? Because if a user signed up on the platform or to the platform, for the platform, to the platform, English is hard. If a user is on the platform and they don't want to receive digest emails, we don't want to force them to receive emails because they might report our platform, they might grow a distaste for our platform and not recommend it to other users. So we only want to send stories. Number one, we want to send the recommended stories for that user. And number two, we want to check if the story has already been read. You don't want to send a story to a story the user has already read. And lastly, we want to check if the user has agreed to receive digest emails or digest stories. Are you together so far? All right. So to a normal user, they get stories in their emails, fine, happy, they read, that's okay. But to an engineer, you have to think about all these things, okay? And some of all these things, if you are developing a website for somebody, they'll not tell you. They'll not tell you. This is something you have to think, like as an engineer, what would I want to do here, okay? So whoever, if you get a job somewhere, building such a system, you cannot be given everything. You have to figure other things on your own. So now after performing these actions, we now have our stories, okay? We now say these stories the user has enabled, has agreed to receive this story. The user has not read any of these stories, and the user, these are the recommended stories for that user. So we take the stories and then we send them via email, okay? Now we do that for every user. So this is user A, okay? This is user A, this is user B, this is user C, ABC, okay? So we do that for every user, and then we also give this person the same list of stories. Okay, not really the same list of stories, because this one has a different preferred stories and whatnot, but for now just assume these stories are different, okay? So how can we represent this in code? And we look at it just briefly, how we can represent this in code. By the way, this is an actual code I wrote for the platform. So if you receive any emails, just know this is the actual code that is responsible for that. So let's go through the code and see what happens. So number one, we see this weird looking thing here. You see this and this. So this opened and this closed. So whatever is put inside here is what we call a doc string, okay? This is a doc string. Doc, where am I typing? My goodness. Oh, I'm typing in the wrong. docs. Oh my goodness. Okay, I give up. I give up. I'll just explain as I go. So this right here is what we call a doc string. A doc string is like a comment. Remember previously I told you, if you want to add a comment in your code, a comment is just a small note you leave so that when you read the code later, you can understand, or maybe somebody else can understand. So this is a doc string. It's just like a comment. And if you read through the doc string, it says get top recommended stories for a user from pre-computed recommendations. So we already have a list of recommended stories. We just need to go and get, okay? And then we joins with public stories and public users to get full story details needed by the email template. Because when we send a story, we just don't send the story. We also want to send who wrote that story. And that is what you're seeing here, story details. Who wrote the story? When did they write it? And for us to do that, we get the user ID, and then we pass in a limit, okay? So what is this user ID and this limit here? So we only want to send 3 stories. We don't want to send 4 stories, 5 stories. No, we only want to send 3 stories. And we also want to get the user ID to whom we are sending the story to, okay? So if we are trying to get recommended stories for who? Okay, so we pass in the user ID, recommended stories for this user. Moving on. And then here we have something called con none. Okay, we don't know what this is for now, so we'll just skip it. Okay, let me just use a different pointer. So, but it's important you notice something here. You notice the equal sign that we are using. Remember what we use that for? We use that to create variables, okay? And then we encounter something called try. We haven't looked at try yet. We'll look at it as we continue. But here we are seeing again con, we are giving it a Postgres connection. So what is Postgres? If you go to your browser and Google what Postgres is, you see Postgres is a database management system, okay? As you can see here. So Postgres is like a database. So we can say we are connecting to a database. So we connect to a database, and then there's a bunch of code here which I'll just skip. We haven't gotten to that part yet. And then here we are saying select. So this is what you call an SQL query. Don't worry about that for now. Just understand that after we've connected to a database, we are going to perform a query to select data. So here we are saying select story ID, select title, select slug, select content. What is the content of that story? We want to select the thumbnail of that story. Who wrote that story? What is the estimated time? How much time will it take to read this story? And then we want to select the username of the author. And then we want to select the score. How are we scoring this author? Are they very well known? Least known? And so on and so forth. But here we are just selecting, but we've not specified selecting from where. So here we are saying we want to select from Mobi user story recommendation. So this might mean we are selecting from a specific database or a specific table. So you would think of this as if you have an Excel sheet that has stories and authors. So you can say select all these column from that Excel sheet, okay? So we'll skip all these. We don't need them for now. We'll skip all that. And then here we are seeing rows, cursor, fetch all. So we understand in English, fetch means, like fetch. And then there is all. So we are fetching everything, okay? And then here, we have another variable, but it has this weird looking thing. Now, remember when we talked about lists, we said you can store items inside a list. So if I had a list, for example, let me just go back to this, pick this. So if we had a list, okay, say vegetables, and we said we want these vegetables to contain kales, We also want it to contain cabbage. We also want it to contain carrots. Okay, and then we close our list. So this is how we define a list in Python. Okay, but here we have another interesting way of defining a list, which is an empty list. So we are saying we want to create a variable called stories, which is also a list, but for now let's keep it empty. We don't want to put anything inside it, so we'll keep it empty for now, and then we proceed. So we will populate it later. So as we continue going down, we can see for rows, in rows, story, dictionary, blah 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 blah, a lot of things. But here we are seeing, I'm breaking, Hassan. Is there anybody else having a problem? So here we are saying stories.append story. Okay, so we are appending, and we know in English to append something is to add it to something else. Okay, so we are appending, and then we are creating an information. So this is logger.info, and then we are saying got stories, recommended stories for user ID from computed recommendation. Okay, that is heavy. That is heavy. So let's try and look at another function. So after we've gotten the stories recommended for that user, what else can we do? So we can come here and say we want to create another function. We want to create another function that will track sent stories, so that we don't send the same stories twice or thrice or whatever. So we track stories that have already been sent. But if you track a story, what do you need to track the story? What do you need to track the story? So to track a particular story, you need the user ID, you need that specific story ID, and then you need the email ID, so that we can see this story was sent to this email. So let's not send it again. Okay, so that is what is happening here. Again, a bunch of confusion. There's a try here. There's a select somewhere. Where is select? Oh, we are not using select here. So we are just saying for story, in stories, story ID, this, blah, 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 blah. A bunch of other things we don't want to look into right now. Now, after we've done trying to understand which stories have been sent already, we want to see if the user has enabled their email. Do they want to receive emails? So that is what this function does right here. Okay, so this function get digest enabled users. So we want to send stories, digest stories, to only the users who have enabled digest stories. So again, we go through the same thing. As you can see, we have select here. So we have select, we are getting the email, the ID, the username, and then we are getting all this from users, as seen here, users. And then we are fetching all. I don't know what it is you're fetching all. And then we are logging found users for digest, verified, non-deleted, blah 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 blah, and so on and so forth. So this is quite a lot, but I just wanted you to see a real world use case of a function. As you can see, it's quite a lot, and trust me, I did not type all this code. This was generated by AI. But I understand what the code does. So that is why I keep telling you guys, do not try to cram select goes where, insert goes where. No. We will leave that to the AI. For now, we have to understand that this is what you want to do. Okay? This is now where you should put your time and effort. What is it you want to achieve? Okay? If you want to achieve this, think about it again. What exactly do you want to what are the so-called side effects of whatever it is you want to do? So after you've done here, you can now give your instructions to the AI and let it generate the code for you, and we'll look at that in a second. However, you just don't let AI generate your code for you and that's it. You also have to understand what each line of code does. Okay, what is the performance? Like, for example, if I can just pick something here, if I can just pick something very random here, where is it? I'm looking for statement. Where is that for statement? My goodness. Okay, like right here. So assuming we are saying for rows in rows, story dictionary row. You see this right here. It can be a huge performance bottleneck if you have a lot of users. Okay, so let's just go back. We look at for statements in, as you continue. We haven't looked at this yet, but we'll look at it in a second. So let's go back to now the issue of object-oriented programming. Object-oriented programming powers almost okay, it's not really powers, but object-oriented programming covers 60% of what coding is, especially for languages like Python and JavaScript and whatnot. Object-oriented programming powers almost everything. So let's jump into VS Code and start writing some code. Have I confused anybody? Does anybody have a question before I proceed? All right, so we have this project that we created in the last class. This project called 8 Hours School. Okay, this one right here. We want to open it in VS Code and see and write some code. So we'll go here and then look for VS Code, Visual Studio Code. Where is it? Visual Studio Code, like so. And then inside Visual Studio Code, we have this code from our previous class, okay? And I'm hoping by now you've typed this, you've played around with it, and then you've seen what happens. So we said we have one particular challenge in this case, okay? We have one particular challenge. Let's say, for example, let me just open something here. Where is it? So let's say, for example, we are dealing with 30 users, okay? So here we have coded Lucy, and we can just try to run our code and see what happens. So terminal, new terminal, we'll close PowerShell. Let's just work with CMD. Actually, there isn't much difference, especially if you're running, simple scripts between using PowerShell and CMD, but I just love to use CMD. So for now, we also don't need this column right here because we have our code, we have our terminal. So I'm just going to click on this and drag it to the end so that my code is visible, okay? So let's try to run our code and see what happens. Python. Now I've forgotten the name of the file. Where is it? School.py. So the name is school.py. And as you can see, we are getting student Lucy, student textbook, student flip pages, student Lucy read, whatever. But what if we want Lucy to submit an assignment? So we can also come and add this to this other field. So I'll just copy this. I'll just copy it from here to here. From here to here. And then I'll paste it here. I'll paste it here. I'll paste it here. I'll paste it here. Okay, now let's run our code once again. So we'll run our code, school.py, and as you can see, Lucy textbook, Lucy flip pages, Lucy read. Okay, we don't have attend class, we don't have submit assignment, but why don't we have all this? It's because here we've defined the function, we've called the function and given it an argument. But for submit assignment, we've not called that function. So we need to call this function and give it an argument. So here we'll come and say submit assignment, and then we give it student name. Again, we call the other function, which is attend class. So down here we'll say attend class and then inside we give it an argument of student name, like so. Let's run our code and see what happens. Submit assignment, student name. Submit assignment takes 0 positional argument, but 1 was given. So let's take a step back and see what this error means. So when you are defining a function, when you're defining the function, let's start with submit assignment right here. So we said this is our function, these are the instructions our function will perform, but it's performing the instructions on what? We've not told it perform these instructions on this thing. So that is what the error means, because as it says here, submit assignment takes 0 positional argument. So it's taking 0, there's no positional argument inside, but 1 was given. So when you are calling it here, we said take this argument. So Python is confused. Okay, so we can take this and put it inside here, and we can do the same for attend class, because if we run this right now we'll get an error. And just to prove that, let's try and run it. And as you can see, attend class, student name, attend class, this function takes 0 positional argument. So there is no argument given inside here, but 1 was given. Python is confused. So here you are giving it an argument, yet here you've not given it the parameter. So we'll copy this and paste it inside here. Okay, let's run our code once more and see. Okay, so we get Lucy blah blah assignment, give teacher, leave home, blah blah, everything works fine. But now this is if you are dealing with Lucy only. What if you're dealing with another student taking another course? What will you have to do? You'll have to come and change our function right here. Okay, so if you want to retain Lucy, if you want Lucy to be printed here, let me just simplify our code. Okay, let me just delete all this. Let's just assume it's only one action. So student attend class, instead of leave home we'll say attend class. Student submit an assignment, we'll say attempt assignment, or we can just say submit. So we can start with the name of the student so that we also don't sound like we didn't go to class 7. So we can say Lucy has submitted her assignment, and then here we can say Lucy has attended the class, and then here we can say student who will be Lucy has studied the book. Okay, so now we have a simplified code. Let's try to oh my goodness, I can't see my live charts. Let me see. Francis, I think you slept in our previous class, but it's okay. So to put it on the right, normally it's always down here. Okay, when you open your VS Code, it will be down here. So you need to click on an empty space right here and say panel position to the right. Some delta, will get to that, to the squiggly brackets. Charles Wesonga is lost. Now I don't know where I lost you. But just bear with me. Just understand the flow for now. So here we are saying Lucy, age 354, course is this and that and that. So let's run our code. So if you run our code, we get Lucy has studied the book, Lucy has submitted her assignment, and Lucy has attended the class. But what if we have a different student? What do we do if we have a different student? Okay, we can come here and say, we can just copy all this. We put it down here, and then we say student name, we are now dealing with Francis. Okay, what is Francis's age? Let's give him 24. What course is Francis taking? Instead of self-taught computer science, we are going to say Francis is taking beauty and therapy. I don't even know if there's a course like that. Okay, so let's run our code again and see what happens. We've introduced a second student, so we'll run our code. And as you can see, Francis has studied the book. Francis has submitted her assignment. Francis has attended the class. But what happened to Lucy? I mean, we still want Lucy to be printed, okay? We still want Lucy to be printed so that we can get a list of all students who have attended the class, who have submitted the assignment, and who have studied. So this is now how functions, or how we get stuck when you only use functions, okay? Now, you can do a lot of, you can try and create what we call spaghetti code, trying to get both Lucy and Francis printed, okay? And how you do that, let's look at it, okay? So number one, we have to give Francis a different variable. So here we can say Francis, student name 2, student age 2, course 2, okay? But if we run our code right now, as you can see, still we are not getting Francis, we are getting Lucy. Okay, earlier we are getting Francis because this variable, if we say student name, this variable will overwrite this one. Let's try and run it right now and see. So we'll run our code. Francis has studied the book. Francis has submitted. It's because, what am I doing? Oh, yes. It's because this one has overwritten. This overwrote that. So I don't even know if that is correct English. So this is also not, okay, we will look at this in a second, but for now, let's just get rid of it. Let's also get rid of that, okay? And then we only have this piece of code. So let's clear our screen, CLS, and run our code again. So we are only getting Francis, we are not getting Lucy. But we also want to print Francis on the screen. So we will give Francis a different name, okay? As a matter of fact, here we will say Lucy, and then here we will say Francis. And then now in our function, what do you think will happen when we run this code? What do you think will happen? Let me give you guys a second to think about it. Just go through the code and tell me what will happen if I run this code. All right, so let's try to run and see CLS, and then we'll run our code again. And as you can see, we are getting an error. Name, student name is not defined. It's because we changed the student name here to Lucy or Francis. So here we have to say Lucy. Here we also have to say Lucy. Here we have to say Lucy. And I really want you to see the kind of repetition I'm doing here. We have to say Lucy. We have to say Lucy. Oh my goodness. We have to come here and say Lucy. Here we'll say Lucy. And finally here we will say Lucy. Okay. You also have to replace this and say Lucy. So Lucy, 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 Lucy. Now let's run our code and see if we get the same error. And you're not getting any error. We're getting Lucy has studied the book. Lucy has submitted the assignment. Lucy has attended the class. But we are not quite there yet, okay? As a matter of fact, let's make it extra simple with only 2 actions. So we'll get rid of attending the class and get rid of calling the function because we've gotten rid of the function, okay? So let's try to run our code again. And you're getting Lucy has studied the book, Lucy has submitted her assignment, okay? So how do we print Francis? Okay, how do we print Francis? Francis is neglected. So to do that, it's simple. We can just replace here with Francis, 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 but it will not print Lucy. But the goal is we want both of them to be printed. So what can we do? We can rename our function. So we can just copy this. We paste it down here. And then instead of study, we are going to say Francis study. Francis studies, and then here we are going to pass Francis. Okay, we do the same here, Francis. We do the same here, Francis. Here we do Francis. And then here, instead of submit assignment, we are going to say Francis submit assignment. Francis study. Okay, now let's run our code again. There is an error. Does anybody see where the error is? Our code will not run as we want it to run, so let's just try and run it. Okay, Lucy, where is Francis? Okay, it's because, like, remember what I said, functions have 3 stages. Define the function, give it instructions, and call the function. So if you don't call the function, it will not work. So here we have to call the function. So down here, I'm going to say Francis study, and then we'll pass in Francis as the parameter, as the argument. We also say Francis submit assignment, and then we'll pass in Francis. Okay, and then we run our code and see what happens. So I'll clear my screen, CLS, and then run the code. What am I doing? And then as you can see, we are getting the result. Both Francis and Lucy are being printed on the screen. Now, here is now why we need object-oriented programming. We've dealt with Lucy, we've dealt with Francis. It's printing okay on the screen. Lucy has studied, Lucy has submitted. Francis has studied, Francis has submitted. But what if we have 1,000 students? Okay, what if we have 10 students? You would imagine you would repeat all this 10 times. This is like 2 lines. You repeat it 10 times. So you'll have this here, have it there, have it there, have it there, have it there for all the 10 students. And then as you do that, you also have to come and call each function for each student, okay? 10 times. This is actually very ugly to look at. I'm even in pain looking at it. So this is now why we need object-oriented programming, which means for every action for a student, we can just give that action to whatever student we give the code, okay? Whatever action we give the code. So let's just go back or let's just delete everything and try to do the same thing again. So I'm just going to copy a piece of code here I wrote. Okay, like that, and we are also going to copy this, we paste it down here, and I'll explain what everything is, and then we get this, we paste it there. That's a lot of code. Okay, that's a lot of code. But let's look at what we have done so far. So instead of creating a separate function for, let me just go to my stream. So instead of creating a separate function for each student that we have, we can create one function like here, study, and then we pass in whatever variable name that we have, okay? And then we do the same for all other actions like here. So if you pay close attention, this is exactly the same function we were typing. But the only exception here is this one right here. We are not saying name, we are saying self.name. Also here we are saying self.name. We are not saying name as we are doing before. We are saying self.name. So how do we define an object? So here, this is how we define an object. So we say class student. This can be anything, by the way. You can put here, like for example, learner, okay? And you look at what error we get when you do that. So we can say we have an object called a learner. What data types belongs to this? Sorry, not data types. What sort of properties will this learner have? This learner will have a name, as you've seen here. And this thing here is just like a special function that runs every time you refer to your object, okay? Every time you refer to your object without really running anything else, this must run. And as you can see, it's saying init. Just think of it as initialization. So it initializes your object. It gives your object the data that it needs. So it gives your object the name, it gives your object the age, it gives your object the code. So these are the data types that you want to work with. So after we've initialized the object and given it the data, we give it now the actions we want it to perform, okay? So we can say, okay, fine. Now we want the student or the learner to study. We want the learner to submit an assignment, okay? So these actions will be performed for every learner that we create, okay? And then our code is not ready yet. We've only set the ground, the basics. We've only set the foundation. So how do we run? Okay, so number one, you have to do what we call create the object. Engineers use the word instantiate. It's used in both Kelvin, both in front end and back end, and you look at how that happens. So we create one object called student1, okay, and then you say this student1 is a member or is a copy of the object. Okay, is a copy of the object. But this object, what does this object require? This object, when we initialize the data, we said it requires the name, the age, and the course. This is by default there, okay? And I have no simpler way of explaining this self thing. I only ask you, do not try to cram it. Do not try to cram this thing, okay? Just understand how it flows. So here we are saying the student will take the name, the age, and the course. So when we are creating a copy of that object, we give it whatever parameters we give it here. So we give it the name, the age, and the course. Okay, if you have student 2, you can do the same. So student 2 is a copy of the student object. Do you see the issue? Here I said learner, but here I'm saying student. Okay, so let's just rename this to student. And then down here we are saying there's the name, there's the age, there's the course. Okay, so we've initialized our object, or we have instantiated, or we have created copies of our object, but we've not really done anything. So if, for example, I get rid of this and try to run our code right now, as you can see, nothing is being printed because we have the actions, but we've not called the actions. We've not really told the object do this, do that. Okay, and that is why we have this right here. Okay, so we are going to say we have student1, which is a copy of our object, but what do we want student1 to do? We want student1 to study, so we'll say student1 study. Okay, and then we also have student2. What do we want student2 to do? We want student2 to submit assignment. So here we can even replace this with John, okay, and also replace this with Mary. Okay, and here we are going to say John dot study and Mary dot submit assignment. So let's run our code and see. So we are getting John is studying, Mary submitted assignment. Okay, what if you want John to submit the assignment? Okay, if you want John to submit the assignment, we will not come and change anything up here. This part will remain as it is. We will only have to change this part. Okay, so we can come and add another function call here and say John dot submit assignment. Okay, and then we run our code. We see John is studying, John submitted assignment, John blah 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 blah. As you can see, we've achieved the same thing we had with the previous code, but with way less lines of code. Okay, now this is very important you understand this dot thing here, because you will see a lot of it when now we start working with a real world project. Okay, now let's bring in AI. Okay, we've been looking at a lot of code. Let's bring it AI. We don't want to type everything all the time. So VS Code comes with its own AI agent. I don't know where it went. I think if you moved your chart to this section, it will be right here. Okay, it will be right here. So we want to bring in the AI agent. So let me try and click use AI features. And once you click that, it tells you, hey, you need to log in. How are you signing in? Signing in using GitHub, signing in using Google, signing in using Apple. Now, for our case, we are going to use this thing right here called GitHub. Okay. Now we will look at what GitHub is, what it does in a future class. But for now, just use this, continue with GitHub. Okay. So I will go to first, I want to create an account on GitHub. Okay. Before I proceed. So I will come to my browser and then I will just type GitHub. And then I will click this very first link here. And then inside here, I will say sign up. And then I think I already have my Gmail account here. So let me just see if I have Gmail here. Yeah, I already have Soma Stories Gmail account. So here I'll just say I want to continue with Google. Of course, you can continue manually giving it your, all this information, but I'll just say continue with Google. I'll select the Soma Stories account, and then I'll say continue. Soma Stories dot username, I just want it to be Soma Stories KE. Country is Kenya. I don't want to receive all this. I already have a primary Gmail account, so I'll say create an account. Verification complete. And voila, I have my GitHub account. Just as simple as that. That is all I need you to do for now. Don't worry about whatever you see here. We'll get to this when we get there. Now I'll go back to my VS Code and I will say continue with GitHub after I've created my GitHub account. And then it will ask for verification. I'll say continue. Blah blah blah. It's important you read all this, but I already have accounts here. So I'll say authorize Visual Studio Code. And then I'll say open link. And then we are back in VS Code. So let me put my terminal at the bottom so that I see things clearly. So I'll right click here. I will say panel position, and then I'll say bottom. So that now this is my setup. I have this screen here, and I like to minimize this because I only need it when I'm running my code. But I have this AI session here, and I have this right here. This is where my code goes. Now let's delete everything here. Okay, let's delete everything here, and let's try to tell the AI agent to do something for us. Okay, let's try to tell it to create a function that will check if I have cooking oil before cooking the food. Okay, so here I will say create a function that will check if I have cooking oil before cooking. Make it super simple. Okay, I want it very simple. So I'll hit enter. Ooh, request failed. Supported code model not supported parameter model. What the heck is going on? Okay, it's saying the requested. Okay, let's just change the model. Okay, so down here it says auto, but you're going to click on it and say we want to use I cannot use ChatGPT 5.3. Let me click on this and say I want to use GPT 4.0. Okay, and then I will run our code again. Okay, we're not running the code, we are running the prompt. All right, so it has given us our code. Okay, the code is right here. And so after it does this, you can just come and say, you can read whatever it has created. If you have any questions, you can ask, you can give it a follow-up question. For example, I don't want the function name to be check cooking oil. Now, this is why it's important you understand the code that the AI has generated. Don't just run the code. So, for example, in my case, I don't want it to say check cooking oil. I want to say like Moses Kitchen. So down here, I will come and say, I want the function name. So you have to know what exactly you are changing. I want the function name to be Moses Kitchen. Okay, and hit enter. And wait for it to change. So as you can see, it has changed to Moses Kitchen. Now, we also have to read through the code and understand what's happening. Okay, so here we have oil available, and then we have this input thing, but we've not handled input. So what is input? We've not handled input. If you keep scrolling, you'll see there's also strip, there's also lower, but we've not handled all this. Okay, let's put a pin on that. But we've handled if statement. So here we are saying if oil available is yes. So if this returns true, remember from our if else class, we want to print, we want to run this. But if the answer is no or anything else, we want to run this. Let's run our code and see what happens. So we just go ahead and run it, and nothing happens. Why is nothing happening? Why is nothing happening? Moses Kitchen. Why is nothing happening? Can somebody spot? Yeah, Hambaba, including self is very important. Can somebody tell me why this code is not running? Yes, so our code is not running because AI gave us the function, but it did not call the function. So it's not running, okay? And this proves why it's it's extremely important to own your code, okay? AI will generate the code, yes, but you must know how your code works. So down here, we are going to call the function now. So we are going to say Moses kitchen, and then we are not going to pass any arguments. We are just going to do that and then run. Okay, and then it's asking, do you have cooking oil? I'll say yes, and then I'll say you can start cooking. Cooking oil is available. Let's run our code again. Do you have cooking oil? I'll say no, and then you need to get cooking oil before cooking. So let's try and look at the code again. So here I'll just say accept, or I'll say keep, so that I remain with this. So AI has introduced a couple of other things that we've not learned, we've never seen before. This thing called strip here, and this thing called lower. But we don't know what it is, okay? We can try to guess. Lower might mean whatever input we get, change it to lowercase, okay? Strip, we don't know what strip might mean, but let's just try and see. So let's run the code again. And as you can see, do you have cooking oil? So we are going to type capital yes. So we say capital yes, hit enter. You can start cooking oil. But what if we type small yes? So you say yes, small yes, sorry. It gives us the same output. So that could be what this lower means. This lower means whatever the user gives you, whether it's capital or small letters, just change it to lower. Did I say small letters? My goodness. Okay. If the user gives you capital letters or whatever, change it to lower capital letters. It's because our code here looks for yes. It does not look for yes capital. Let's try and remove this lower here and see what happens. In fact, I'll just remove entire line of code. So I'll remove it all. And then I will run our code. Okay? And then I'll type capital yes. You need to get cooking oil. You need to get cooking oil. But that is weird. I've said I have cooking oil. Why are you telling me to get cooking oil? It's because we've not stripped our yes. And remember, we are only looking for the small yes. Anything else, anything you type will go to else. Okay? So let's say, for example, we type dog. You need to get cooking oil before cooking. Okay? That is very ambiguous. Okay, it's even more confusing than when you type yes. So there are three very important things you have to pay attention to there when you're working with AI. Number one, there is a great deal of ambiguity because we want our code to be as specific as possible. If somebody has 300,000 in their bank account, you want to show them 300,000. You don't want to show them 200,000. Or if the user asks, do I have enough money to withdraw? You want to tell them you do not have enough money. This is your balance. You don't want to say you don't have enough money. Okay, that is very ambiguous. So AI includes a great deal of ambiguity, and also when you're coding with AI, it will include things you do not know. Like for example, what am I doing? I'm trying to copy the strip. Okay, so we can just say dot strip and dot lower. This is supposed to be a function like so. So as you code with AI, at some point it will introduce things you do not know. So if you do not know anything, you can just try to play with the code and see if you can figure out what it is, or you can try to Google and find out what those things are. Remember, I told you, your teacher, your lecturer, whoever is teaching you can never give you 50% of everything there is in tech. They can only give you, if they try, 20%. So you have to add your 30% to get to 50 and then continue to practice to get to a higher level. Okay, so AI has written this code for us, but our code is ambiguous. It's not very direct to the point. Okay, so let's try to make our code a little bit better. So we can introduce an elif statement here. We can say elif, elif requires a condition. Sorry, I've forgotten. So elif, I'm going to copy all this. So this is just the AI agent trying to suggest things, but I don't want it to suggest things because it's doing a terrible job. So I'll just come here and say elif oil available is no. We want you to print you need to get cooking oil before cooking. Okay, and then else we can say something different, like for example, sorry, we didn't get your answer. So that if a user types something else that is not either yes or no, we tell them, hey, we do not understand your answer. So let's try to run our code again and type dog. So you'll hit that and say dog. And as you can see, sorry, we didn't get your answer. Okay, let's try and say yes. You can start cooking. How about if you use a small yes? Okay, how about if we use yes? Okay, again, as you can see, so now our code is a little bit accurate. Okay, it's doing exactly what we want it to do, but the AI agent did not give us 100% what we wanted. Okay, it gave us a starting point and then we added things on top of it. So of course that can change depending on the model you're using. So if you go down here and change your model, you might get different results. Okay, but again, the is it called principle, or it remains understand your code. Okay, understand your code. So let's try and create a website using the AI agent. Okay, so I'm going to delete everything here, or I'm going to retain everything. In fact, I will copy and then I will go to the agent and say create a simple website using Vue.js that can simulate this. Okay, now here I have introduced something called Vue.js. If you remember from a previous class, I said when you're working with the front end, you have multiple frameworks and tools you can use. If you can remember, when we are looking at sample websites and the tools that are used, so if I come to, for example, Soma Stories, and I go to this tool that you downloaded in the previous class, where is the tool? Where is the tool? Where is the tool? So let's try to add a tool here called Wapalizer. So I'll click on these extensions. I'll say discover extensions. And then here I will type Wapalizer. And then I'll click this very first one here. I will say add to Firefox. It takes a second to download. Why are you taking ages? Why are you taking ages? Why are you taking ages? Oh, that did not work. Let's try again. Okay, for some reason this is not working as I expected. Let's see. Let's try to refresh it again. Okay, that is not working. So we can use a different approach. We can just copy the website and then we can go to the website called Built With, which is a technology lookup. So Built With, and then we are going to type here and then lookup. So we want to find out which front-end framework was this website built with. And as you can see, this website was built with a front-end framework called Next.js. So there are a couple of front-end frameworks that you can use to build a website. So we have Vue.js, we have React.js, we have Angular.js. If you've noticed, most of them end with JS. It's because they are JavaScript framework. In the front end, JavaScript rules. Okay, JavaScript is like the undisputed champion in the front end. So we can see this one was built with Next.js, but we have other tools like Vue.js. So let's look at Vue.js. If you go to your browser and type Vue.js, as you can see, Vue.js is right here. Okay, You can try to read through and see what happens, what it is about, but you look at this more when we get into front-end and back-end technologies. So for now, we are just going to use it to create our website. So I'll hit enter. Requires an empty folder, allow 8 hours school, select empty workspace. Please open an empty folder in your workspace so I can, okay, this AI agent is very dumb. So let's let's try to create a folder here, say front end. And then we give it the same instructions. I use the up arrow to go back to the previous command. So I'll use the same instructions, but here I will say use the folder, and then I will come here, I will right click, I will say copy path, and then I'll paste that path here. Can I have some tea, please? I'll paste the path and then wait for it to do its thing. So let's read the output. I have created a simple Vue.js website in folder frontend. You can open index.html file in the browser to simulate the cooking oil and check functionality. Let me know if you need further assistance. I'll let you know, don't worry. So we'll go to our folder, we'll go to file manager, we'll go to desktop, the 8 hours school, and then inside the front end, it's telling us that it created this index.html, which is weird because I asked it to create using Vue. But let's just double click. And okay, so we have our front end. We have Moses Kitchen. Do you have cooking oil? No. You need to get cooking oil before cooking. Do you have cooking oil? Yes. You can start cooking. But this is very ugly. Websites don't look like this. Websites don't look like this. So we'll go back to it and say, make it a little bit, what word can we use? Make it a little bit cuter. Okay, and then we wait for it to do its thing. Alright, so I've made the website cuter by adding some styling for a cleaner and more visually appealing layout. You can check the updated design by opening index.html file in your browser. Let me know if you need further tweaks. I'll let you know. So let's go back to the browser and we refresh. And it has tried. At least there's some color. There's, it's at the center. So do you have cooking oil? Yes. Do you have cooking oil? No. Okay, and then you get the response. Okay, so this was just a small introduction on how to work with AI agents. So if I want to change anything in the website, I can come here and see what it has written. So this is Moses Kitchen. There's JavaScript there. There's styling here. This is the body styling. This is styling the button, which has been given green. So I can just keep scrolling. I say this is Moses Kitchen. Do you have cooking oil? And then we get the response here depending on when we click the buttons and so on and so forth. We will dive into all these when we get to the front end section. But for now, I just wanted you to see how we can use AI to speed up our development, okay, without really using AI as the replacement. So AI will write the code. Quite frankly, and let me just be honest, I suck at writing code. I'm very poor at writing code. Writing all this, I'm very poor. I would introduce a lot of mistakes. I would freeze. But reading code, I know how to read code. I know how to see the logic. This goes here, this goes there. It's because I actually write a lot of notes. As you have seen on my wall, there are quite a lot of sticky notes. And I also have practiced the art of reading code. I've shared more on my article, Learn Smart, Learn Faster, Learn Smart, if you've read it. I think that marks the end of our session today. Does anybody have any questions? All right, so your assignment for this course is to set up your GitHub account and set up the AI agent in Visual Studio Code. ask the AI agent to write a function that does something. Whatever that function is entirely up to you. And then do share a screenshot in the achievement Discord channel. If you get into any errors, do share in the help channel, and I'll see you in the next class. Thank you.